My name is Peter Eckhout. I'm an archaeologist, and I'll be taking you to important sites around the globe. We'll meet other archaeologists, and together learn about their investigations and recent discoveries. Let's embark on a fantastic voyage through time and history. In the heart of Cambodia's mountains, a French archaeologist believes he's identified a royal capital devoured by the jungle. A city which would have been the model for one of humanity's greatest historical gems, Angkor. Since its discovery in 1861, Angkor has continued to fascinate scientists. The site extends as far as the eye can see, over 350 square miles. For us archaeologists, this open-air research site is without equal. For me, Angkor is one of the most beautiful archaeological sites in the world, like Machu Picchu in Peru and Copan in Honduras. Indeed, the various temples are like so many architectural gems that we discovered during our visit. Not only is the architecture fabulous, but it's just one element in this exuberant environment of plants. It's beautiful, and it reminds us of the transient nature of these civilizations. Yet, at its peak in the 12th century, Angkor was certainly the most important city in the world. It counted about 700,000 inhabitants. It had over 200 temples, palaces, and a particularly elaborate hydraulic engineering system. A huge empire was administered from this capital. It extended from the current Laos to the borders of Vietnam and radiated over the entire peninsula of Southeast Asia. A powerful empire founded 3 centuries earlier by a legendary king, Jayavarman II. His history is known thanks to this stele. It recounts that in the 9th century, Jayavarman II conquered a large territory and founded the Khmer Empire. He proclaims himself God King. He then settles in the mountains and creates a powerful royal capital, Mahendraparvata. When the stele was deciphered in the early 20th century, scientists led expeditions into the mountains in search of Mahendraparvata, the forgotten capital. The latest expedition is led by a French archaeologist, Jean-Baptiste Chevance. To get to his archaeological base, he has to travel over a network of routes traced through the jungle. Tell me, Jean-Baptiste, before you started digging here, this spot had hardly been investigated?
Yes, research was mainly focused on Angkor, where the majority of monuments are located. This area was set aside due to problems of access, the problem of the Khmer Rouge living here for several decades. We'd begun some investigations. We weren't really starting from scratch, but we hadn't dug here yet.
A real pioneering job.
Yes, in a way, you're right.
Several scientists had already explored this region. In 1936, a French art historian, Philip Stern, lists a dozen temples in the jungle. He brought back statues and reliefs from his expedition. They're now preserved in the Guimet Museum in Paris. In the 1960s, a second scientist from the French School for Far East Studies, Jean Boulbet, continues the investigations. But the arrival of the Khmer Rouge stops all research. The area is filled with mines. It was not until the 2000s that Jean-Baptiste could again enter this jungle. It's late afternoon when we arrive at An Long Tam. It's in this traditional village with 1,000 inhabitants that Jean-Baptiste has established his base. That's what I call a beautiful research base house.
If we compare cartographic and architectural data, here for example,
The first thing he did on arriving here was to study the records of his predecessors.
concerning this area, the first really interesting map for us is the map from Stern's mission, in which one sees a number of monuments. It's a little bit like Angkor. We're interested in these temples and religious monuments here.
That were visible at the time.
Stern's first collection of objects is from these temples and monuments.
We're talking about collecting objects, meaning they didn't dig. They just collected what interested them most because it related to art history.
Yes, at the time, they called them searches. It turns out that the methodology has changed since the 30s. Their method was more of a removal of objects as part of a highly specialized survey of decorative art objects in these monuments.
Very interesting. And you basically followed in his footsteps and revisited particular monuments.
That was the basis of this exploration of key sites.
Thanks to the presence of these temples, Jean-Baptiste's predecessors claimed that they had discovered the city of Mahendraparvata. But the techniques of the time did not allow them to date the remains precisely. So Jean-Baptiste took over the investigation. His first step was to search for the temples identified by his predecessors to date them accurately. What a marvel. It's splendid.
It is.
Coming out of the forest and in this light, it's really fantastic.
The lichen covering the facade is beautiful.
The first question Jean-Baptiste sought to answer is very simple. Does the construction date of these buildings match the reign of Jean-Baptiste II in the 9th century?
In the details, we see the friezes of plant foliage, pendants, and pilasters, carved mainly with plant motifs.
When you look at this and compare it to Angkor, the impression is that it's simpler, more basic.
Yes, in a way, this architecture serves as a laboratory for what we'll find later in Angkor. But here, we're in a phase in which the architects are still searching, so the architectural forms are quite varied, and they'll move in a direction that will later be found in Angkor.
And the excavations and research you conducted here on these monuments, what did they teach you?
The idea was first to date the occupation and construction. So the idea was to uncover a number of indicators, such as charcoal in the layers of interest to us, ceramics, obviously, and compare construction methods to determine some dates.
And what date did you come up with?
Studying the scheme of Jean-Baptiste II's city, we'd say it's in the early 9th century.
Jean-Baptiste has searched several other temples, like this one, the Ho Paong, and its 82 feet high tower. He got the same date, the 9th century. Inside these temples, often looted, archaeologists sometimes find eloquent religious symbols closely linked to the personality of this king, such as this fragment from the base of this pedestal that the team of the archaeologist Ratha Chin is in the process of moving.
Oh, hello.
Hello. Nice to meet you.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Alors, qu'est-ce que vous êtes en train de faire?
So what are you doing here?
We remove the pedestal to
We're bringing the pedestal to the surface because it was under the ground and lichens grew on the stone.
The decay will happen to the stone, so it's not good.
So we've brought it up to save it from bad conditions.
This is the one
That's part of our program for preserving this temple.
Okay.
Jean-Baptiste will investigate these remains, but he already thinks that this pedestal may have supported a statue of Shiva, one of the three higher gods of Hinduism, the religion practiced in the Khmer Empire. On this site, Jean-Baptiste and his team often find this deity represented in the form of a linga, a phallic symbol. Jayavarman II, the self-proclaimed God King, was particularly fond of this deity. It suggests a fairly close relationship between the sacred and the power.
Yes, we always see a strong link between the royal power and the clergy in the Khmer civilization. And this link will materialize more with a complex concept, which is that of the God King. The God King concept was invented by the Khmer at that time, and it strengthens the link between the gods and the king.
It participates in the royal power.
Exactly.
Jayavarman II, the God King, seems to have left his mark here. Are these the remains of his capital city, Mahendraparvata? Another building not far away helps to validate this hypothesis. These are the ruins of a large structure, made with big red laterite blocks, which indicate a pyramidal architecture. Impressive.
This is Rongchen. It's the only mountain temple in Phnom Kulen. It's very important architecturally and symbolically.
A mountain temple. Is there a symbolism attached to it?
Absolutely. It's a multi-level pyramid evoking Mount Meru, the mountain in Indian mythology that's mentioned in the creation of the world. So this is a reproduction of that mountain that brings us closer to the gods.
Thanks to his excavations, Jean-Baptiste created a 3D model of this mountain temple. It consisted of 5 platforms and measured 700 feet at its base. On some levels were galleries and smaller annex buildings. At its summit, archaeologists found traces of a wooden structure and a pedestal that housed the statue of a deity, definitely a linga, the Shiva god. The workforce needed to build such a temple is enormous. Who was at the origin of this?
It was certainly someone who had great power, so we connect it with Jayavarman II, the ruler known to have reigned in several places in Cambodia, especially Phnom Kulen. Our excavations have also helped to clarify the dating, indicating a correspondence to the dates of his reign. So there is strong evidence to support the idea that this monument was built by Jayavarman II.
This hypothesis makes Rongchen one of the first mountain temples ever built in Cambodia. Archaeologists even consider this monument to be a kind of prototype. Jayavarman II was the first to erect mountain temples to create strong symbols of the unity of his empire. These mountain temples will then be copied by his successors. And this links perfectly to Angkor, where several mountain temples still stand, like the Prerup, the Takeo, or the Bayon, with its towers carved with faces of deities. The most developed of them is undoubtedly the famous temple Angkor Wat. In the Khmer Empire, the construction of a new mountain temple marks the arrival of the new king in his capital. This mountain temple, Rongchen, is thus a strong symbol suggesting that the famous capital of Jayavarman II, Mahendraparvata, is definitely here. But an essential element is still missing. A royal capital must have a royal palace. Jean-Baptiste went looking for it in the heart of the jungle.
Eh bien, sincèrement, par rapport à ce que je connais,
Honestly, from what I know, I feel a little lost. How do you identify vestiges in such an environment?
It's the result of a lot of exploration, of walking in this environment, and relationships with villagers who help us as guides. For example, here you see fragments of bricks, and fragments of bricks indicate ancient constructions and buildings.
Jean-Baptiste found many bricks like these at his site, so he decided to search the zone. He opened large trenches and discovered these wall foundations and paving stone, a material reserved for prestigious buildings. With these data, he was able to create a 3D model of this exceptional building. The ensemble forms an extraordinary large rectangular complex. The many buildings making up this ensemble form a unique structure. For Jean-Baptiste, there's no doubt, this is the royal palace of Jayavarman II.
la découverte
What does the discovery of this palace teach us about its principal occupant, Jayavarman II?
qu'il avait un
That he had a palace, because that was a missing element in the typology of the Khmer capital.
Khmer, on a un temple montagne.
We have the mountain temple and satellite temples, and generally there's a royal palace.
On l'a,
This was the missing element.
c'est aussi un
Now we have it.
nous permet de dire qu'il y avait
This element also allows us to say there was a centralized power, a civil power, many laborers, because it's an extremely large site, which required the presence of a large population to build it and inhabit it.
construire pour l'habiter
So this is the first demonstration of the capital's spatial organization.
d'une organisation spatiale de cette capitale.
But to refine the identification of Mahendraparvata, a piece of the puzzle is still missing. Where did all the workers live? Where was the city itself, and how large was it? Wooden houses haven't survived the ages. It's impossible to identify the fallen ruins under this dense jungle canopy. So Jean-Baptiste turned to an advanced technology, a helicopter-carried laser radar called lidar.
La technologie
LIDAR technology has revolutionized archaeological exploration, especially in regions like this one where vegetation cover is very dense. LIDAR allows us to see through the vegetation, revealing the micro-relief of the ground.
reconstituée
We can therefore identify the building remains, walls, etc., which would have otherwise demanded hours and days of surveys on foot.
qui sans cela aurait nécessité
So today,
des heures et des
it's a
heures
big time saver,
de prospection
and it offers us an unmatched accuracy.
et également une précision inégalée jusqu'à présent.
2 exploration campaigns were carried out over Angkor and Phnom Kulen in 2012 and 2015.
It's a completely different topographic area.
Naturally, Jean-Baptiste was associated with this international scientific project that brought together several teams of researchers and archaeologists.
We see the massive Phnom Kulen that emerges from the plain. We'll see it on the computer.
Thanks to LIDAR, the entire area has been mapped. What we see here is the mountain temple.
This is the mountain temple, Rongchen.
Fabulous, because it appears very clearly, while from up here, it's not easy to see.
LIDAR's advantage is its extremely accurate image.
Thanks to LIDAR's technology, Jean-Baptiste was surprised to discover a major network of roads crisscrossing over 10 miles, interconnecting the main monuments and structuring the zone. Also appearing, a series of dams and basins, a complex hydraulic network for retaining and distributing water. an urban plan is revealing itself. Do you now have any idea of the number of houses, types of neighborhoods, or the population density?
Yes, we have a high degree of accuracy, measured to the meter, so we can see a number of plots along these axes that may correspond to residential zones. After, it's hard to know exactly how many people lived in these plots, so it's hard to find an equation for the entire city. But we have a relatively clear vision to restore the urban occupation.
Thanks to these data, Jean-Baptiste headed back to the zone with the Cambodian archaeologist Cette. The goal is to observe structures on the ground that were revealed by lidar
Now we are here.
and try to find concrete traces of the inhabitants of this city.
But I don't know.
I don't know. What do you think? I think I'm not sure. Because it's a vestige. You'll have to check.
So Sakada did some surveys.
Hi, Sakada.
Hi, Sakada.
Hi, Peter. How are you?
Grâce au lidar,
Thanks to lidar, you've been able to develop a research strategy and to dig trenches all around. What did you find?
This year, we decided to do the excavation of the road connected to the temple. And we found a lot of old ceramic from the time of Jayavarman II.
Yeah. So that's why we think a lot on this period.
So we see a lot from this period. And it's clear from looking at the ceramics.
We know that thing.
Because with the ceramic, we know the dating, and we compare them with the temple's history. And we understand that a lot of people lived here during the reign of Jayavarman II in the 9th century.
And here is the legendary city of Mahendraparvata, revealed through the archaeologist's long work. With its secondary temples, the mountain temple, its palace, its advanced hydraulic engineering, and highly organized urban network. All the elements that we'd find later in Angkor are here, already in place. But what the excavations also seem to suggest is that the occupation of this city was fleeting. Archaeologists still do not know exactly why, but after less than a century of occupation, the clearly opulent capital will be abandoned. And the rulers will move to the Angkor plain in the late 9th century, reproducing the urban model initiated in Mahendraparvata. But was the city completely abandoned? Almost everywhere on the site you see magnificent rock carvings in the image of Vishnu. These works were created much later. What do they signify? Why were they carved? To answer this question, Jean-Baptiste takes me to one of his favorite places, the River of 1,000 Lingas. Here, the riverbed is covered with symbolic representations of Shiva. What a magical place.
Superb. It's a very special place. We're in the riverbed of the Siem Reap River on the plateau of Phnom Kulen. The riverbed is entirely sculpted for over a half a mile with representations of linga, the phallic symbol of Shiva. It's one of the characteristics of this site, where this motif is multiplied in abundance to sanctify the river that flows all the way to Angkor's temples.
Was Mahendraparvata forgotten?
No, the capital was abandoned as the seat of royal power, but there was an important phenomenon later in the 10th and 11th centuries. In fact, it was a phenomenon of hermitages. A number of hermit scholars withdrew from the world, and they made their homes on the ridges of the massif. In rock shelters, they meditated. We found bas-reliefs, inscriptions, a large wooden structure which shows that these monasteries became centers for pilgrimages. And this is a very important phenomenon because the hermitages still exist to this day. Phnom Kulen has retained its sanctity through this phenomenon of hermitages for almost 10 centuries.
Jean-Baptiste's work led to the discovery and identification of Mahendraparvata, this capital at the origins of Angkor. But this discovery is only the first step. Years of research are still needed to explore every vestige of this great city that has re-emerged from the jungle.